What's up, everybody? In this video, I'll be using Unreal Engine and Cursor, which is a software that writes code using AI, to see if I can create a project in Unreal without writing any lines of code. So as you can see here, I'm just creating a template project using the top-down template in Unreal, and I have it loaded up here. And like I said, I'm not going to be writing any lines of code. So as you can see, it just plays the normal templated scenario. You can walk around and click for where you want to go. And I'm going to be trying to, just using prompts, have the AI add features to the game and get it to work. Now I'm going to run into issues along the way, as you'll see, but Cursor, which is this program right here, will be able to fix that. So what I'm doing right here is just indexing the code base, and this allows it to look at all these different files on the left and essentially add them to its base of knowledge to know what files are in the project. And up here, I can ask it prompts. So as you can see, I can say, hello, I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'd like you to add some functionality to my Unreal Engine project. And I asked, do you think you can do that? And of course it says, I'll be happy to help. And you can see the first thing it does is it starts looking over all the files, all the source files and all the folders in the projects, just to try to get an idea of how it's configured. And once it does that, it's asking me if I could give it something specific that I'd like it to do, and even gives me some options. So after I read through these options and think about it for a little bit, I eventually decide that I want it to give me something simple, and I want it to be able to do it itself, only in C++. So I took one of its suggestions and asked it if it could do a simple dash with the control key. And you can see right here on the right, it's actually generating the C++ code, and it's populating those files on the left with that code. And it even kind of prints out, in English terms, what it's doing. So even if you don't have any knowledge of code, you can still potentially do this. Now, at the beginning here, it gets a little funky because it's trying to compile something. I'm not 100% sure why, and it's wanting me to run these commands, which is what I'm doing. I don't think this actually did anything. I think it just might have been a little bit confused, but I kind of played along with it and let it run the commands it wanted to run, even though they were failing. And eventually, I guess it decided it was okay. But you can see it prints out here what it's done. So you can see it's added a shift key to the game, and it tells me how to do it and tells me exactly the steps I need to do. So now I've switched over to Rider, which is an IDE, kind of like Visual Studios, and I'm just kind of expecting the code. You can see there it added a dash input, and it added a perform dash function, which, again, I didn't write any of this code. The AI just wrote this code a few seconds ago, and all I'm doing is just pressing the debug or the play button inside of Rider, my IDE, and launching it. So now when I press play in the game, I walk around. I'm expecting the control key to be able to allow me to walk, but it doesn't. You can see right now I'm trying to press control and nothing's happening. So it's not a problem. I just go back to this and I ask it, when I press the control key, nothing seems to happen. So what's the deal? And you can see it thinks about it for a second, and it says, I see the issue, blah, blah, blah. So you can pause this and read through it if you want. There's going to be a lot of these prompts, so I'm not going to read through them all. But you can get a general idea of what it's doing if you look at these green lines. So the green lines are the things it's adding, the red lines are the things it's removing. And it basically gives me a step-by-step instructions of what I need to do next. Now, it's essentially saying that it's done all it can, but it's giving me step-by-step instructions of what I need to do in Unreal. Because it's saying I need to create an input action context for this and actually assign it to the control key. So again, I'm not doing any coding. All I'm doing is just setting up UAssets here, and I'm following the instructions on my other monitor exactly what it's telling me to do. It did all the coding in the background. I'm just literally following step by step on what it's telling me to do. Now, unfortunately, this fails, and so I copy those errors, I paste into here, and I literally just say, hey, when I try to compile, I get these errors. Can you fix them for me? And I paste the errors. And when I press enter, it will kind of analyze the errors and try to figure out what to do. And again, I know how to fix these errors because I program for a living, but I'm trying to do this as if I don't know anything, and I'm just totally reliant on Cursor, this AI, to tell me what to do. So you can see I told it what the error was, it identified where the error was from, and it fixed the error. And now when I run it and I press the dash key, you can see now it's doing this little dash. And so this is cool because, like I said, I didn't write any code at all. Now I tell it, great, thanks, this worked, and I kind of make fun of it and tell it to be more careful in the future. But then I ask it if it has any ideas on what it would want to add next, and I try to suggest that it keeps things simple and something that it can do in C++ without me having to like go into Unreal and click too many buttons. So again, it gives me a list of suggestions that it would like to do, and I kind of read through these, try to pick one that is interesting, not too simple, not too hard. I eventually settle on the collectible system that is suggested, which are items that the player can pick up when he walks over them. So tell cursor this is what I want to do, and cursor starts immediately generating new files. You can see it generated a collectible item class with a bunch of code in it. It generates some HUD related code to be able to render stuff. And again, it prints out that it completed, and you can pause it on that screen if you want, but it just prints out a few things it wants me to do in Unreal, like creating blueprints derived from the C++ class that it just created. And again, I'm not writing any code. And here I identify a bug is that when I try to select the static mesh inside my BP collectible item, which is telling me to set, I can see it in the details panel, but I can't actually edit it. And I ask it if it knows why. And it says, essentially, it sounds like you're running into some issues. Here are some potential fixes. Now, I read through these fixes and I realized that that's not the problem, because when I look back here, I realized that the mesh component that it decided to create is not actually set up correctly. And I specifically point out this to the AI, and I tell it that I'm specifically talking about this variable that you created. And then it kind of gives me a better suggestions, because the first ones were not super helpful. And it, better than just giving me suggestions, it actually fixes the issue. And it adds the edit anywhere U property on top of it. Now when I try to run it, I get this error, and I tell it appears to be failing on this line. I just copy paste the line. I don't even read the error. I ask it, what is this doing? Is it needed? It says, essentially, no, you're right, this is not needed, and it ends up just removing that line. I don't know why it added that line, or I've never really even seen that before, but I deleted it. And I tell it to be more thoughtful in the future, trying to get it to stop doing these stupid random errors. So anyways, with that line removed, it says, yeah, I just thought this was funny. It says, yeah, you're absolutely right. I apologize for the error. Should have been more careful and thoughtful when suggesting code, blah, blah, blah. And so now I tell it, good job, looks like it compiles. But at this point, I had forgotten what I was doing, and I ask it to just remind me where I was. And this is another thing that's really cool about this. Like, if you lose track of where you were, you can just ask it, like, hey, tell me what I'm supposed to be doing again. And so, again, it gives me these steps of what I need to do to create these blueprints in Unreal. Again, I'm not doing anything that the AI is not telling me to do. I'm literally just copying, pasting, or not copying, pasting, but just copying the instructions that it says, because some of these things I need to create in the editor itself. So you can see, now I've dragged in a couple of these collectibles, and I just set them up to have this little donut shape. And you can see at the top right there, it's even printing out items collected and total value. So when I walk over one, it says I now have one item. And I don't know why it decided to add this value thing, but it gave a value to items, I guess, and it decided each item is worth one value. So now I said, wow, great work. It all worked, and it seems to be pretty happy with itself. And it gives me some more suggestions on things that I could want to do next. So coming back into here, this is just a side thing. I did notice it wasn't playing a sound. I actually muted the sound for this video, but I noticed it added a little sound cue parameter that I could add to it, so I just hooked that up. That's all that was. And now I ask it to add some power-up things. And so it's going to go in here and figure out how to add power-ups to the game. So it ultimately decided to add 3 different power-ups, a jumping one, a dash one, and a speed one. And again, it wrote all the C++ code in the background for it, and now it's just having me create this power-ups folder and create a couple blueprints derived from these. Again, these blueprints, there's no code in them. It's just setting up files, essentially, and it tells you exactly what to do. And here I was a little bit confused. I asked it to explain what it meant when it said create a new blueprint based on this existing blueprint. And this is pretty nice too. Like if it asks you to do something you don't understand, you can ask for clarification. And here I'm just reading what it says, and I tell it, yes, that makes sense, thank you. And then I go back to Unreal, and I start doing the thing that it said. And I wasn't sure if it was telling me to like create a child class of this or duplicate it or what it was. And so that just clarified that to me. And again, feel free to pause if you ever want to like read any of the replies. Sometimes they're interesting, but it's just a lot of text to try to fit into one video. So here I drag in this power up. That's a speed power up. And you can see when I walk over it, I'm immediately walking faster. And again, I didn't code anything for this. I didn't even look at the code that it wrote. I don't know if it's good or not, but when I pick it up, I walk faster. And then I was curious, how long does the speed power up last for? Because again, I didn't code it, so I don't know. And so when I ask cursor this, it promptly replies that it will last for 15 seconds and even prints out exactly in the code, if I want to modify this, where I would go. So I thought that was pretty cool because it can very easily reflect on the code it just wrote and answer questions for you. So being satisfied with that, I continue doing the steps that it told me to do before to add the jump and the dash cooldown pickups. And so back over here, you can see I have them for created right now. I have the collectible item, which is the thing that gives you points, and I have the 3 power-ups. So now I'm just kind of dragging these into the world. I'm adding a lot of these donut things, which are kind of like coins that you get to pick up, and I'm adding in these various little different power-ups. Now I chose the shapes for these. The AI didn't. I just picked a random geometry for these, and you could have chosen whichever one you want, but the AI didn't do that part. Just to be clear, it created the whole class for me, but I just selected what I wanted it to look like. I don't know what that was. Anyways, so now I'm asking it, what does the dash cooldown power up actually do? Because when I picked it up, I realized it wasn't actually seeming to do anything, and it's telling me that it slightly reduces the dash cooldown, and it starts giving me this really long gibberish answer, and I basically just tell it, this all sounds very confusing to me to do myself. Could you do it? Basically, I want the player to be able to dash once every 5 seconds unless they have the cooldown or the power-up cooldown, in which case they should be able to dash, I think I ended up saying every 0.5 seconds or every second. Yeah. So sometimes it just like gives you a bunch of garbage and you'll just say, can you just do this? And it'll end up doing it. So I just asked it to make it so that you can dash once every 5 seconds if you don't have it, and once every second if you do have it, so it's much easier to tell. So you can see right now I just dashed again. I'm waiting 5 seconds in between each thing. I'm just spamming the control key to making sure this works. You can see it's only letting me dash once every 5 seconds. And when I pick up this power up here, which is that triangle thing, and I press the dash key, or no, that was the speed boost one, I forgot. If I come over here and pick up this one, this is the dash one, so you can see I dash, and I can dash again quite quickly, once every second. So that's that working. It was very simple to make a modification to the existing power-up. So I tell it that worked, but can you make the cooldown 0 seconds when I have the power-up? Now this ended up being a mistake because it got quite confused on how to do this correctly. You'll see this in a second. When I pick up the dash power-up, I wanted to have a cooldown of 0 seconds, but instead of having a cooldown of 0 seconds, it just made the dash like never-ending, essentially. Like I pressed the control key and it was just never-ending dashing. And I asked it, what have you done? Now when I press the dash key, my character zips across the level super fast, and I was kind of confused why this did this, and I ended up just saying maybe a better approach would be to undo what you just did and set the cooldown to a small number, like something like 0.1. So I had a feeling it was going to struggle with this. Maybe I could have pressed it a little bit more, but I kind of just helped it and gave it a better idea. So you can see it comes in here and basically just undoes the work it just did, and set it so that it has a cooldown of 0.1, so it didn't have to try to write special cases for a cooldown of 0, which it seemed like it was having to do before. So now I can press the control key and spam it, and I get the effect that I want, where it basically appears like there's no cooldown. So I tell it this seems to work, and I tell it the next thing I want to do is make it so that as you're playing the game, these random pieces of geometry are going to fall out of the sky, and if they hit the player, you lose a life. And I think I tell it that you can only have 3 lives. So this is to give you some reason why you should be running or dashing, and basically make some sort of challenge to the game, because right now there wasn't any. And again, this is just something I thought off the top of my head. I wasn't trying to make like a sellable game necessarily, just something that I thought the AI might be able to do reasonably easily. And I give it the folder path of where the starter content is, which is the meshes, so all the different shapes like pyramids and cubes and stuff like that. So I told it just pick one from there. So when I press play, you can see it just dropped this random shape out of the air, and you see I have lives now at the top left, and when my lives get to 0, it says game over, and it even added a press R to restart, which I didn't ask for. And so I told it this seems to work, but pressing R to restart the game doesn't do anything, because when I was pressing R, it just didn't do anything. And so it does this thing again where it looks over the code and tries to figure out what the issue is, and when I recompile it, it didn't work. So I tried again, I say this still doesn't work, and so it tries again. Sometimes this happens where you tell it to fix something, and then it will try once, and it won't actually fix it, and you'll have to say, no, this still doesn't work. So I think this time, after some trial and error with it, of me telling it, no, it's still not working, I think this time it actually works. So game over, I press R, you can see the game reset. So I tell it that worked, and it seems like you overcomplicated things quite a bit. And because I realized when I was looking at the code that it set up the R key different than it did the control key for dashing. So I'm basically telling it here, like, you've overcomplicated this. Can you just set up the R key in the same way that you did the dash? And the AI essentially says, yes, you're completely right. And it redoes it. Unfortunately, it does it wrong again, so I have to tell it again that the R key does not work. And I even covered a little bit of suggestion of like, how would you have me again do this like I did for the dash? So then I go in and I set up the dash stuff, and again, it gives you all the instructions for how to do that for the input mapping context. So now I have the R key set up the same way as the control key, which is what I wanted. Again, it worked before, but it wasn't a great way, so I kind of told it to do it a better way. And so now when I run out of lives here, I press the R key, and it works. And it's using the way that the dash key is working, and so I think it's a little bit better this way. And I kind of mess with it here. I say good job, and I ask it if it feels good about itself or doing things the right way instead of trying to hack it together. And it says it feels much better about itself for having done things the correct way. So it's kind of cool that it sort of has a personality, and it'll talk back to you. And so now I ask it, essentially tell it there's two more things I want to do. First, I want to make it so that the randomly falling pieces fall more frequently. And I tell it that the game feels a little bit boring, it should feel more intense. And I also tell it that I want the pieces that fall from the sky to despawn after a couple of seconds. So you can see here it did what I said, and now there's a lot of pieces falling. So that certainly did what, made a lot more pieces, made it feel more intense. But I noticed it added some code where the objects on the ground no longer hurt the player. They basically have their collision removed. So I asked it if it could keep that, and so it removed that code. So now objects that are on the ground still hurt you. And I asked it to zoom out the camera a little bit more. And now I'm asking it to just spawn the pieces higher. So you can see how easy it is to iterate on this. I know it might be moving a little bit quickly, but I'm just saying, hey, can you spawn the pieces higher up? Because I zoomed the camera out, so I want the pieces to spawn higher up. So you can see now it's doing that. The game seems to be working. Again, I haven't touched a single line of code, haven't really even looked at it too much. Sometimes I look at it when it's being generated and just to kind of see what it's doing, but I definitely haven't changed anything, at least not manually. It's all been done through the AI. And now I'm just coming in here and adding a little bit of colors to the pieces, so it's a little easier to distinguish between like the gold coins and the blue power-ups, and then the white pieces that fall out of the sky, just to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. And here I'm just testing the game. So I picked up all 6 coins, and I'm thinking the last thing I want to do is make it so that if you collect all the collectibles, which are all those gold coins, the game ends and says you win, and gives me the option to press R to replay the game. So I kind of skipped the part where it's compiling, and I'm just showing you this now to show you what it looks like. So if I come around and I pick up all these pieces, you can see before when I did it, it didn't actually do anything when I got all 6 of them. The game just kept on going. So now when I get the last piece, I was expecting the game to end because I told it to do that, but you can see I've collected all 6 up here, but the game didn't end. So I come back and I say I collected 6 out of 6 of my collectibles according to the HUD, but the game hasn't ended. So again, this is something you have to do a lot. It seems like you tell it to do something, it doesn't quite do it, and then you have to explain why it doesn't work. And so now it's regenerated. So I come back here, and now I just have it playing at normal speed, pick up everything. Now it pops up you win, and I can press R. So here I'm just dragging in a few more pieces, and I think I'm going to run this here at normal speed to show you the whole game a little bit slowed down. So again, these blue things are power-ups. This one is the speed boost one, so now I have the speed boost. See, I have my lives at the top left and my items collected at the top right. And I walk around and pick it up. So right now I'm just retesting to make sure it works, because I went from 2 gold coins to 6 gold coins, and I wanted to make sure that it would dynamically handle that if I dragged in more coins into the level. Here's the dash power up, which doesn't really matter because I'm about to beat the game. So I get this one, I get that one, and there we go. It says you win, and the R key does work. I don't know if I showed testing that in the video, but the R key definitely does work. All right, so there you go. If you guys liked the video, please like and subscribe. I also have some ways to support me below in the description. And if you guys want to see a tutorial on more in-depth of how to use cursor, like kind of what I was doing behind the scenes, let me know in the comments. And if I get enough people commenting on it, I'll consider making a tutorial on how to get all that set up. It's really not that hard, but if you're not super familiar with Unreal or cursor, it could be complicated. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.